Frank Castle thought the war was over. After years of bloodshed, the legendary vigilante known as the Punisher has vanished from the streets of New York. Criminal empires whisper his name like a ghost story, but nobody has seen him in nearly 5 years. The city believes he's dead, but evil never stays buried for long. The movie opens in a quiet fishing town far from the chaos of New York City. Frank Castle now lives alone in a worn-down cabin near the docks. His beard is grey, his body scarred from decades of violence, and his hands shake slightly from old injuries. Every morning follows the same routine: coffee, silence, and isolation. No war, no killing, just survival. But peace is something Frank Castle was never meant to have. One night, a young girl named Sophia crashes her bike near Frank's property while being chased by armed men. Frank notices immediately that these aren't ordinary criminals. They move like trained soldiers. Sophia begs for help, terrified and bleeding from a gunshot wound to her shoulder. At first, Frank refuses to get involved. He patches her up and tells her to leave before sunrise. But when the men hunting her arrive at the cabin, Frank sees the symbol tattooed on one of their necks: a black serpent wrapped around a skull. The serpents, an underground cartel once believed destroyed years ago. Frank realizes something impossible has happened. Someone rebuilt the organization from the shadows, and now they're more powerful than ever. The attackers storm the cabin, expecting an old broken man. Instead, they awaken the Punisher. What follows is one of the most brutal action scenes in Marvel history. Frank moves slower than he once did, but every movement is precise and savage. He uses hunting knives, traps hidden around the cabin, and sheer rage to eliminate the squad one by one. By the end of the fight, the cabin burns to the ground, and Frank stares into the flames, knowing his quiet life is over. Sophia reveals the truth. Her father was an accountant for the Serpents before secretly gathering evidence against them. Before he was murdered, he hid a hard drive containing information on politicians, judges, military officials, and criminal organizations connected to the cartel. Sophia escaped with the drive, making her the most wanted target in America. And the man leading the Serpents? Lucas Grant, a former CIA Black Ops commander who once worked beside Frank Castle during covert missions overseas. Frank thought Lucas died years ago, but Lucas survived, and he blames Frank for abandoning him during a mission that turned into a massacre. Now Lucas has built an empire using corruption, fear, and private military forces. Unlike previous villains, Lucas understands Frank completely. He knows how he thinks, he knows his tactics, and, worst of all, he knows Frank's weaknesses. Frank reluctantly agrees to protect Sophia while trying to expose the Serpents before they seize total control of New York's criminal underworld. The movie shifts into a dark road trip thriller as Frank and Sophia travel across the country seeking allies from Frank's past. First, they visit Curtis Hoyle, Frank's old military friend. Curtis now runs a veterans support center in Chicago. He immediately realizes Frank is heading towards suicide. Curtis warns him that this war cannot end peacefully. But Frank responds with a cold line that defines the movie: "Peace was never meant for men like me." Curtis helps decrypt part of the hard drive, revealing a horrifying truth. The Serpents aren't just criminals. They're preparing coordinated attacks across multiple cities to create chaos and profit from the destruction. Lucas Grant plans to rebuild America through fear, and he wants Frank Castle to witness it all. Meanwhile, Lucas watches Frank's movements through hacked surveillance systems. He doesn't fear Frank, he admires him. In several scenes, Lucas speaks about Frank like an old brother-in-arms corrupted by grief. He believes they are the same. The difference is that Lucas embraced the darkness, while Frank fights against becoming completely consumed by it. As the movie continues, Sophia slowly breaks through Frank's emotional walls. She reminds him of his daughter Lisa, forcing him to confront the humanity he buried years ago. Frank begins teaching Sophia survival skills, how to stay calm under pressure, and how to defend herself. For the first time in years, Frank starts to care about someone again, which makes him vulnerable. Lucas eventually captures Curtis and broadcasts a message directly to Frank. He challenges him to return to New York for one final confrontation. The middle section of the movie becomes an all-out war. Frank returns to the city he once terrorized. Criminals panic when rumors spread that the Punisher is back. Entire gangs flee their hideouts overnight. One unforgettable sequence shows Frank attacking a heavily guarded Serpent warehouse during a thunderstorm. Armed with only a shotgun, body armor, and homemade explosives, he tears through dozens of mercenaries in a relentless assault. The cinematography emphasizes Frank's age and exhaustion. Every punch hurts, every gunshot leaves bruises, but his rage keeps him moving. After rescuing Curtis, Frank learns Lucas intentionally allowed the attack to happen, It was a distraction. Sophia has been kidnapped. Lucas contacts Frank one final time and tells him to come alone to an abandoned naval shipyard where they once trained together as soldiers. The final act is pure tension. Frank enters the massive shipyard at night, surrounded by rusting warships and burning oil drums. The entire place is rigged with traps and mercenaries. Lucas wants Frank to fight through every piece of his past before reaching him. What follows is nearly 30 minutes of non-stop action. Frank uses guerrilla tactics to dismantle Lucas's army step by step. Sniper duels erupt across giant cargo cranes. Explosions tear through shipping containers. Hand-to-hand fights happen inside flooded corridors beneath the docks. But the closer Frank gets to Lucas, the more exhausted he becomes. By the time they finally meet face to face, both men are battered and bleeding. Lucas tells Frank the world created monsters like them and then abandoned them when the wars ended. He claims they were never heroes, only weapons. Frank doesn't deny it. Instead, he says, maybe, but I choose who I point the gun at. The final fight is brutal and personal. No music, no flashy superhero spectacle, just two aging killers destroying each other with fists, knives, chains, and broken metal pipes. Lucas gains the upper hand and nearly kills Frank, but Sophia escapes captivity and distracts Lucas long enough for Frank to stab him through the chest with a combat knife. As Lucas dies, he laughs and tells Frank the war will never end. Frank quietly replies, "It ends with you." The shipyard erupts into flames as police and federal agents arrive using information from Sophia's hard drive to begin arresting corrupt officials across the country. But Frank disappears before authorities can find him. In the final scenes, Sophia is placed under protective custody and begins a new life. Before leaving, she receives a package containing Frank's old Punisher skull vest, along with a note that reads, "Make your life mean something." The movie ends with Frank sitting alone on a bus heading toward an unknown destination. A news report plays on the radio discussing how organized crime across New York is collapsing after the destruction of the serpents. For the first time in years, Frank closes his eyes peacefully. But as the camera pans down, we see a police scanner beside him. Another crime, another city, another war waiting to begin. Frank slowly opens his eyes. Cut to black.